Molly, thanks a lot for that. Now, as voters stream in to cast their ballot and pick America's next president, let's listen into some voices coming in from the swing states.
It's not even about Trump versus Biden or Harris. It's about God taking our nation back. And he's going to use Trump to stand firm as a government official.
Well, I'm supporting Kamala Harris. And what brought me to the poll today is I think my vote counts. And I cannot allow that man to get into office.
Well, I think he's a better candidate. If I'm going to a lawyer or a doctor or a physician for assistance, the last thing I care about is their personality, their religion, or their attitude. I need brain surgery. I want a good brain surgeon. I need a lawyer. I'm going to court. I want the best one I can get.
Oh, yes, everything. You name it, I've got it against her. To me, she is just an absolute nothing candidate. All she is somebody that they can put in place as a puppet. And she just, fills Joe Biden's shoes because neither one of them is capable of being president.
I think she fits more what I'm looking for into a leader and stuff like that. I think also more the rhetoric that Trump does is not what I'm looking forward to and stuff like that. I think a lot has changed since he's run for president as far as the discourse between the two parties, and I'm not for that and stuff like that, so that's why I'm more for Kamala and stuff like that.
Let's now tell you what's happening on the ground. Susan Teherania, correspondent, is joining us live from New York. And on the other side, Siddhant Sibul is joining us from the Capitol Hill. Welcome to the broadcast, both of you. Susan, quickly I'll come across to you. And your state, New York, has 28 electoral college votes, and it has voted for the Democratic nominee for decades. But you see, this time it's different. Trump's pitch to voters has focused on economy, immigration and crime. Something we are seeing is grabbing eyeballs even of traditionally blue states. Is that something you've been picking on from New York?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question. What was your question?
I'll repeat. I'm saying that this time, since the election is so polarized and Donald Trump has been focusing on issues like immigration, border and economy and inflation, a lot of the traditionally blue states has also been listening to Donald Trump. So is that something you've picked on New York, given that it's a traditionally blue state?
Yeah, that's very true. And the last time that a Republican won New York was when Ronald Reagan took over almost the entire country, except for one state, and that was Walter Mondale's. But, people are concerned. They're concerned about the economy. They're concerned about their pocketbooks. And they're also concerned about the issue of immigration. New York City right now is considered to be, although it's not, a border state at the end of the day because of so many illegal migrants here eating up the resources of ordinary Americans and average Americans and the taxpayer dollar that's going to these resources. So that issue is front and center here in New York City. But it's also important to note that while the popular vote may kind of sway more towards the former president, as you well know and you have been reporting so well, these are electoral college votes. Ultimately, we have to wait and see whether or not it's going to turn so towards Donald Trump that it might flip a state like New York. But then it's also just important to say that, around New York City is very blue, but then you go towards Long Island and you move a little bit north and even south of New York, and you see that, they really have that sort of red flavor, and Staten Island as well. But ultimately, the electoral college votes, because of the winner-take-all system that's here in the United States, it usually goes to blue. It'll be history-making if it does turn red, but you're absolutely right. These are issues of concerns for voters here in New York. And just really quickly, I'll say, while they are concerned about this, they don't necessarily think that Donald Trump is the candidate to fix these issues. A lot of them think Kamala Harris will do a better job.
Right. Siddhant, if I could now come to you. The national race, of course, between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump is of utmost importance, but there is the congressional race that's also taking place. What are you hearing on that front? What's happening?
Well, the projection is that there can be a flip that can happen in terms of the party's presence, in terms of the majority they have. Behind me is, of course, the Capitol Hill. And, of course, this is the place which decides the law. The lawmakers pass the law here, and if there is a potential swing that is projected, then for the new president, whosoever it is, might have to deal with a Congress which is from an opposite party, and vice versa when it comes to the Senate. So it's just not a battle when it comes to the race to the White House, but it's also the race to the Capitol Hill as well, both in terms of course, the political swing that might happen, but also in terms of the security. In fact, if I can show you the situation on ground here at the Capitol Hill, and security, of course, you can see has been significantly increased. In fact, the entire area, in fact, I was standing inside that area when I was doing my earlier lives, but I've been moved out here along with other people as well, because the security has been increased, because on ground, nobody wants to take chances. Everyone clearly remembers what happened in January 2021 in this country and at this place. And that is why the worry or the concern is not just the results, but the outcome of the results, and how the party which has been defeated, the candidate which has been defeated, might take the result as.
Right. Susan, you and I have been analyzing, sometimes I would say over-analyzing what's going to happen in the swing states, because they're so crucial this time, especially this time. So we know that the ballots have opened across the 7 swing states. Are you hearing anything from them?
Yeah, you know, right now everyone is in voting mode, so people are taking to the polls. They're going and trying to make their voices heard. Even in those regions that you mentioned earlier, they're having some problems and difficulties, not only with the rumors and those non-credible threats, but also with some of the machines in Pennsylvania and here in New York as well. Both candidates are urging their voters, if they have waited until the last day, to stay in line. Be patient and definitely have your votes cast. But right now, everyone is in voting mode right now, and no one's making any predictions in fear of, as one person just told me, not to jinx it.
Yeah, it does seem like that. Siddhant, quickly, 2.6 million Indian Americans are eligible to vote this time. You have been talking to a few of them. What are their concerns? And also, someone who is looking at these elections sitting in New Delhi, who aspires to study or work in America, should one be wary of the policies being brought up by Donald Trump or Kamala Harris?
Well, I spoke to both the Indian Americans and Indians here. I spoke to many Indian students here who, of course, are closely watching the results of the election, because that can impact the future prospects for them here in this country and the future prospects of their friends, their brothers, their sisters as well. When it comes to the green card, when it comes to the H-1B visa, that is something on top of the mind of many Indian students here. But essentially, Indian American voters, yes, you're right on that bit. They are in minority, but they punch above their weight. That's very clear in terms of, first, in terms of the affluence. They are one of the richest communities in the country, contribute to the highest taxes in the country. So when it comes to tax, they are closely weighing the policies of both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. They fear if Kamala Harris comes, the increased taxation on them will happen, because she has been promising affordable housing. Someone needs to pay, and it could be them. When it comes to a Republican candidate, Donald Trump, many male Indian American voters are supportive of him, given that his policies they find as pro businesses. But one thing that has stood out essentially is that Kamala Harris, despite being Indian ancestry, hasn't been able to cash in on her Indian ancestry to woo Indian American voters. In fact, the number of Indian American voters who are expected to vote for Democrats are expected to fall relative to the past, when they voted in large number to Biden. And this is a shock development for the Democrats, because essentially, first, the Indian Americans have been traditionally Democrat voters, but increasingly they have been, what word has been used by them, disillusioned by what Kamala Harris has been promising, especially on the immigration front. In fact, immigration is one of the biggest issue for the Indian American community. They say that they came legally by hardworking, by studying to this country. But what they now see is number of aliens, illegal people coming here, and they have to fund for their housing here in America. So that's the issue conversation happening among the Indian American community. Of course, both the Democrats and the Republicans have been wooing the Indian American voter. Whether it's the Diwali at the White House, where we saw Joe Biden making a pitch for Kamala Harris, or whether it is the comments made by Republican candidate Donald Trump in terms of the Bangladeshi Hindus, where he said that this is something that is condemnable and he would like to have good relationship with India and Prime Minister Narendra Modi. So each and every word of both the candidates is being closely watched and weighed by the Indian community here in not only Washington DC but across the country.
All right, Siddhant, we would quickly tell our viewers as well. We are just hearing that the early voting in Pennsylvania, the votes are currently underway. The counting is underway in Pennsylvania. Now remember, Pennsylvania brings in 19 electors and is being seen as the most pivotal state with highest number of electors among swing states, and only 4 states have more electors than Pennsylvania, and none of them are swing states, which is what's making Pennsylvania an important state this time. Susan, your take?
I know people are voting in Pennsylvania right now, and according to experts, 600,000 people would have to go out and vote on Election Day for Kamala Harris to win that state. As of now, as you mentioned, people are going to the polls. There have been reports of, some issues with the machines, but it seems like it's smooth sailing for now. A lot of states, they're not allowed to count the votes until it's closed, until polling stations are closed. And I believe Pennsylvania is one of those as well. They can process it once everyone has started voting, but it's very early to do that right now. So right now what we're seeing is people going to the polls and voting.
And Siddhant, thank you so much for getting us all those updates from the ground. Good to speak to both of you. For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.